Hi everyone, welcome to this workshop. I think we can start. Today my colleague Simone will show you how to write an ntopng plugin. In fact, the latest ntopng version has been extended with a new SDK that can be used for extending ntopng with simple Lua scripts in order to extend the capabilities. So first of all, the plugins can access the ntopng, the metadata extracted by the ntopng analysis engine from traffic. And you can use those metadata to generate alerts, for instance, or update the score indicator for flows and those, which is useful, for instance, for identifying compromised hosts. So Simone in this workshop will show you what is the workflow that should be followed for writing any kind of plugin. So I let Simone start with the workshop. Are you ready, Simone?
Yes, Alfredo, thank you for the introduction, and thanks any one of you for joining us this presentation today, this workshop. So let me start with the agenda. Well, today we are going to see a brief introduction and history behind the ntopng plugins. And then we are going to, basically, for the rest of the presentation, we are going to write an ntopng plugin. And I will try and guide you to write this plugin using a step-by-step approach, basically. So we will start with a simple plugin, and then we will add more and more functionalities to eventually complete and finish the plugin to have a fully functional plugin to do certain things inside ntopng. I would like this presentation to be interactive, so if you have questions and if there's something that is not clear, or do you want me to spend more time on it, just feel free to raise your hand and ask a question so we can stop, go back, and discuss the topic in more detail. This presentation is going to be approximately 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes. So let's start. Let's start with a brief introduction. So we have worked a lot in the latest release of ntopng, so the release 4.0, to make it more extensible. Extensible because we wanted community contributors to be facilitated to ease their work, to ease the way they can contribute back to ntopng with original plugins, with new plugins. Because, I mean, we believe that the real philosophy of open source is not just being on GitHub or being free. We believe that open source means something which can be easily extendable by others, by other community users, by other community contributors. So we have put a lot of effort in the latest ntopng to make it more extensive. So we basically redesigned the ntopng architecture to make it more modular. So we taken out most of the functionalities of ntopng. We've taken them out from the C core and we put them into plugins. So what is a plugin? A plugin is basically a set of Lua scripts. Lua is just a scripting language like Bash or Python. So it's something that you can write on the fly and execute on the fly without the need to go through a compilation process. So it's not like C or C++ that you need to change the line, then rebuild the software, recompile, re-execute. Lua scripts are just simple files that you can edit and reload at runtime without the need to recompile them. So the latest ntopng version features several, I would say at least 50 different plugins to implement functionalities which were previously implemented in the C core. So what are the main functionalities of these plugins? Well, maybe the most important functionality, which is also the object of this webinar, is the ability to execute custom user scripts on active.
Sorry, it seems we had some issues with the microphone. Just a second.
Oh,
Simone, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, can hear you. Yes. Can you start again with the last slide, please?
Okay. Maybe someone muted me because I found my mic, which was muted.
Okay.
So do you want me to start from this slide again?
Yes, more or less, yes.
Okay, so the main ntopng plugin functionalities. So maybe the most important functionality of ntopng plugin is the ability to execute custom user scripts on active hosts, devices, flows, and other network elements. So this means basically that you can write Lua scripts and tell ntopng to execute them when a certain event occurs or periodically. And we are going to see this in a while. You can also use plugins to create new pages inside the ntopng web interface. So if you want to add a new chart, or if you want to add a pie chart or a new visualization for your data, you can create a plugin to add a new web page to the interface. Similarly, you can add menu entries, or you can write plugins to monitor the status of your system or to perform active measurements towards external devices. I don't know, maybe an ICMP or a DNS probe. So you can do many, many things using plugins. Today, I would like to focus on this functionality. So the execution of custom user scripts. So let's see, what does this mean? So user scripts, as I've already mentioned, are basically Lua scripts that you can execute on network elements. Network elements that are flows or active hosts or interfaces or other network elements as well. Just to give you a few examples of these user scripts, you can write user scripts on flows to check if a flow is blacklisted, or to inspect the TLS certificate or the DNS name of a particular flow, because maybe you want to look for a particular string which is suspicious or which you don't want to see in your infrastructure. You can also write Lua scripts to analyze the TCP sequence of flows, so to monitor retransmissions or out of orders or other sequence related things. This is as regard the flows. You can also write user scripts for hosts or interfaces. For example, to check if a host is blacklisted, or if you want to trigger an alert if the traffic of an host is above or below a certain threshold. Or you can write user scripts to detect traffic spikes, detect input and output traffic on a particular interface. But you can also write more advanced user scripts, for example, to turn a port off if you detect that there is a suspicious activity on that port. You can do this using SNMP. So the functionalities are very, very, there are many things that you can actually do. And those plugins are basically divided, those user scripts are basically divided into two families. They are event-driven or periodic. They are event-driven for flows. So basically you get your user script executed every time when a flow is created or when the layer 7 application of a flow is detected or when the flow has ended. This is for flows. For hosts and other network elements, user scripts are executed by ntopng periodically. Basically, this means that they are executed by ntopng every minute, every 5 minutes, every hour, and every day. So in this presentation, we are going to focus on this particular element. So we are going to write a flow user script which analyzes the flow risks and generates an alert. So we are basically use this line, this event-driven user script execution. And we are going to see this in a while. Maybe someone of you are already familiar with the new UI of ntopng, where you have settings, user scripts. Well, what you can see in this page is basically the UI configuration of user scripts, because user scripts can be configured from the UI. This means that when you write this script, when you write the Lua code of a user script, you also have the ability to configure or turn the plugin on and off directly from the UI. So once you have written your user script, you can forget about the Lua code and just interact with it using the UI. So all the list of user scripts that we see here in this page, blacklisted flow, data exfiltration, blah, 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 are all of them are user scripts, are Lua user scripts that are configurable from the UI. Okay, so as I said, in this presentation, we are going to focus on flow user scripts. Flow user scripts, as I've mentioned, are event-driven. So we expect ntopng to execute our user script when a particular event occurs. Events are associated to the life cycle of flows in memory. What does this mean? It means basically that let's have a look at this slide, which maybe it's a little bit more clear. The ntopng handles flows with a life cycle. It means that when the first packet of a flow is received, the flow is created, then ntopng analyzes the traffic until it detects the application protocol. Then it keeps the flow active in memory until it no longer sees packets belonging to that particular flow. Once this event happens, ntopng marks this flow as ended, and this is the last step in the life cycle of a flow. Using user scripts, our ntopng is able to call our user scripts during the life cycle of the flow. So, for example, as soon as the layer 7 application of the flow is detected, the core of ntopng automatically calls protocol detected. So protocol detected is just a function of our user script. This means that in our Lua script, we can just write a function called hook.protocolDetected to have that function automatically called by ntopng every time the layer 7 application protocol is detected. Similarly, for long-lived flows that they last for at least 5 minutes, ntopng calls another hook, which is called periodic update. Again, periodic update is no more, no less than a simple function written inside our user script. And we are going to see an example in a few slides, a real example. Finally, when the flow has ended, ntopng has ability to automatically call the hook called flow end. So the hooks basically is just hooks is basically a table which contains all the functions we want ntopng to call on every flow. Okay, let's see. We are going to see these in detail now. The interesting thing that we can do inside our user script is to pull and push data from the C++ core. So ntopng features an API to actually interact with the core. This means that inside a Lua script, we have an API which we can use to extract the data from the core or to set the data into the core using an API. And we are going to see an example of this as well now in the presentation. Okay, so let's start writing our plugin. Let me briefly recap the aim of this plugin, of this presentation. So in this presentation, we want to write an ntopng plugin for flow risk analysis. It means that we create an ntopng plugin. This plugin is going to contain a flow user script, so a piece of Lua code executed during the life cycle of the flow. And inside this flow user script, we want to read the risks associated to a flow, in particular the risk associated to the HTTP protocol. And we want to generate alerts. So when we detect that there's a risk associated to that particular flow, we want to generate an alert to see that actually this risk has been detected and we want to be notified. And as a bonus, if we have time, I will also show you how to send these alerts towards external alert endpoints. So if you have a Slack channel or Discord channel, an email, or blah, 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 you can also send alerts to these external endpoints. And this flow plugin can actually be enabled and disabled straight from the ntopng web UI. So the result is going to be more or less this. We have the flow risk associated. We have an active flow marked with a red triangle, which says, hey, there is a flow risk. I've detected a flow risk associated to this flow. And we also want to generate alerts with severity error that tells us that an issue with the flow has been detected, and so alerts are available in an historic in the historic page. So this is basically what we are going to see now. Okay, let's start with a real example. Actually, I don't know if you guys want to follow along with me during this presentation. You should have compiled and have a running instance of ntopng. And apart from this, you need a text editor. That's pretty much all which is needed to write a plugin. So let's start and create a directory that is going to contain our plugin. Let me open this. I'm going to start an instance of ntopng. Okay, so ntopng looks for plugins inside a directory which is under scripts plugins. So you can browse this directory and you are going to find several folders because plugins are divided into families. So you have alerts, collector endpoints, monitors. But today we are going to focus on plugins for the generation of alerts. So we are going to place our plugin inside this directory alerts. Again, alert plugins can be divided logically into families. So we have network alerts, security alerts, and other types of alerts. Today, as we want to create a plugin for security alerts because it's a plugin which detects issues, security risks associated to the HTTP protocol. So we are going to place our plugin inside the folder security. So here we are in plugins, alerts, security. So how can I add a plugin? Well, adding a plugin is as simple as creating a directory, which I'm going to call HTTP risks because our plugin is going to analyze HTTP risks. And I can just create a manifest file. A manifest file is just a simple description of the plugin. So this is the only file which is needed to create a plugin. The very, very basic, the most basic structure of an ntopng plugin is just a folder plus a manifest file. And in the manifest file, we just create a very simple structure, just a return of a table where we set the title, description, and author of our plugin. So let's start and add HTTP risks as the title of our plugin, and let's add the description. So risks associated to the HTTP protocol. And I'm going to specify my name here. Okay, that's pretty much all. So from this point on, our ntopng knows about our plugin. What we can do now is just pointing our browser to ntopng. We can visit page developers plugin. And now I click on this button, reload plugins. I click reload plugins. And as you can see here, ntopng has reloaded the plugins, has found the HTTP risk plugin, it has read the manifest file, and now is telling us that that the plugin has been loaded. It has a title HTTP risks, and this is the description. So the plugin is now loaded. Of course, now it's useless because it has just a manifest file. And let's start and add more functionalities to this plugin. First of all, I mean, I've said that our plugin is going to feature a user script. So to feature a user script, what we need to do now is to create a user scripts directory inside the plugin directory. So I create HTTP risks/user scripts. Now, again, remember that we want to create a user script which analyzes flow risks. So it's a user script which will be run on every flow. So inside the user script plugin, I create a new directory called flow. And eventually, I add a Lua file called http risks.lua. So this Lua file is going to contain the actual user script plugin content. So we are going to write the script inside this http risks.lua. ntopng knows that this http risks.lua is a flow user script because it is found inside directory flows contained into directory user scripts. So let's start and add some content to this basic http risks.lua. Now I'm going to create a very, very basic structure for this user script. So a minimum set of things necessary for the user script to be executed by ntopng. So at minimum, our user script is just a Lua table called script, but you can call it using any name that you want. And eventually, in the last line of the file, you return the Lua table previously created. So you create a Lua table here, local script, with some content, and then eventually you return these to ntopng. So there is a minimum set of fields that we have to specify inside this script Lua table. This minimum set of fields is shown here in this page. First of all, we specify a category for our script. A category is, it can be security, it can be network, or there are many other categories available. So you just have to pick a category among those available inside user scripts categories. Then you have a flag to tell if this plugin is enabled or disabled by default. So this is by default enabled. This is actually not even necessary. We could also remove it directly. If you don't want the plugin to be enabled by default, you set it to false. Then we have the hooks that I'm going to show you in a while, but we have already seen an introduction of these hooks earlier. And eventually, you have a part of this script which is used to configure and show the plugin in the UI. See, this is called GUI, and I can set a title and a description to see my user script inside the ntopng UI. So I can add here HTTP risks, and I can add a description here, and I can tell risks associated to the HTTP protocol. So now, at this point, ntopng knows how to show our plugin in the UI. I can just save this file, go back into the user interface, and hit reload plugins. I hit reload plugins, but this time ntopng is complaining. It's telling us no hooks defined in user script HTTP risks. ntopng is complaining because this hooks table is empty. What does it mean? Hooks are basically the functions that we have seen here. Script.hooks, protocol detected, periodic update, to hand, and blah, blah, blah. So this table is now empty. So we need to add at least a function, add at least a hook, so that ntopng can correctly execute our plugin. So let's see how we can do to actually add a hook. Let me create a very, very basic function here. I create a Lua function called flow risk analysis. And for now, I just write to console a message called protocol detected. That's pretty much it. Now I want to associate this function to one of the hooks, to one hook which is found inside the script. So I can do script dot hooks dot protocol detected is equal to this function flow risk analysis. So now I have added this protocol detected hook, which is this one, basically this protocol detected hook, to the hooks available for the script. So from this point on, ntopng will know to execute this particular function every time the protocol is detected. So for each flow, it executes this function as soon as it detects the protocol of that particular flow. Now I can reload the plugin. And if I go back to the Lua file now, I see that it starts telling us protocol detected, protocol detected, protocol detected. So this is simply our message. This is the message that we have written here, which is printed to the console. This happens for every flow that ntopng sees. If we go in the UI, now we can also visit the user scripts page, flows, and if I search here for HTTP, here we are. We have our user script with the name and descriptions that are those we have written here. And this user script is available in the UI, and we can actually turn it off from the UI. So if I click this red button, ntopng now will stop executing these HTTP risks. Indeed, if I now go back to the output of ntopng, we no longer see any protocol detected message because we have turned the plugin off. I can go back to this page and turn this plugin on again. And in a while, we will see again this message is protocol detected, protocol detected. So what we have seen so far is just we have seen how to create the basic structure of a flow user script and how to execute a function when the protocol is detected for every flow monitored by ntopng. Now I would like to show you how to add more interesting functionalities to this plugin, which is basically a dummy plugin, I would say. So, okay, if you have questions, I think that I can stop a little bit, and yeah. If you have questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, I can continue. I can move forward. Okay, so let me move forward. Let's add a little bit of juice to our plugin. Let's add a little bit of extra functionalities to our plugin. We want our plugin to analyze the risks associated to the HTTP protocol. So basically, to add functionalities now to our plugin, what we are going to do now is to interact with the C core to extract the risk analysis and to extract other information such as the HTTP information. So inside the plugin, how can we interact with the C core? Inside the plugin, we interact with the C core using this global Lua table flow dot. If I use flow dot, I'm basically jumping straight into the C core of ntopng to be able to extract data associated for that particular flow. This means that I can use here my flow dot something to call functions and to extract data from the flow that is being processed by ntopng. If we want to process, to extract the risks associated to this flow, we use this API callback, which is called has risk. So has risks basically returns as in Lua all the risks associated to a flow. And in particular, for this webinar, to write this plugin, we are interested into the flows associated, the risks associated to the HTTP protocol. So these risks are calculated by nDPI and are available inside the ntopng C core. So we just need in Lua to call this function flow.asRisk to automatically read all the risks associated to this particular flow. In particular, we are going to use, for the sake of this example, the risk associated to the use of a numeric IP host. This risk is basically what happens when we type a numeric IP address here in the address bar. So you basically do this action when you want to bypass the virtual servers of Apache, for example, because you set directly the IP address of the host. So let's see how to extend our plugin to detect this event and to print out some more meaningful information to the console. So let me throw this dummy function away and let me add a more, I would say, a smarter function, still associated to the hook protocol detector. So this time, our flow risks analysis function has a little bit more lines. Let's see them. Let's have a look at them and at their meaning, basically. So first of all, we say if flow.hasRisk. This flow.hasRisk is the very same functions we have just seen. So we are asking the C core, does this flow has a risk associated to the nDPI HTTP numeric IP host? If the function returns true, then it means there's this risk. So if this risk is detected, we once more contact the C core to extract all the HTTP information. So it means that last URL, method, response code, and a series of other metadata. We extract these, and then we say, if the extraction is successful, and if this flow has the last URL available, we print out a line to the console. But this time, the line contains the last URL, see, last URL %s, plus additional flow metadata, including source and destination port, source and destination IP address. And this additional flow metadata is extracted from the C core using the flow.getInfo. So now we can save this code, go back to the page, hit reload. We can go to plugins, reload the plugins. Okay, we see ntopng has not complained. Yes, it's complaining. So then, okay, I need to now see here. I use flow risks.risks. So I just need to import this flow risk, which is missing. This is a library that I can import like this. Okay. So flow risks require flow risks UFIL, and now I can use data available from the library of flow risks. Let me go back and reload plugins one more time. Okay, now ntopng is no longer complaining, so we can basically test our plugin is working or not. So I use curl because I'm a more command line guy, and I use curl to request HTTP ://178 blah blah blah. So I click this, the request succeeded. And if we go back to the output of ntopng, we see that it has executed the function and it has print to the console all the information we have requested, among which we have the last URL. Last URL is 178, 72, 97, etc. And this is the flow metadata, which includes source and destination port, source and destination IP address, and the URL. If I go back to this page and I type slash blah, I don't know, blah, blah, and I click, now this time I would expect here to see that a URL has changed. And indeed we see this time that the full URL that ntopng has dissected is the numeric IP address plus /bar, /bar, /bar. So this is basically the minimum things that are necessary to write a Lua script that detects the risks associated to a numeric HTTP IP host. So again, we have a script now which detects this risk and it prints it out to the command line, but it's not that useful because, I mean, we don't want to stay and look at the command line for all the day. So how to make this plugin more efficient, more effective in detecting these kind of anomalies? Well, we can extend our plugin to generate alerts. So every time that this event is detected, we want our plugin to generate an alert. How can we do this? And now I'm going to show you how to extend the plugin that we have coded so far to generate an alert. So how to trigger a flow alert? Well, to trigger a flow alert, we basically need two things. We need to set a flow status, and we need to associate an alert to a flow status. So what's the difference about these two guys? Maybe if you are familiar with ntopng, if you are familiar with the UI of ntopng, if you go to the flows page, you have a drop-down status, and you have several available statuses here. You can pick normal, alerted, misbehaving. So flow statuses are basically what you see in the status drop-down. All the statuses are created by means of Lua scripts, as we are going to see in a while. Then, optionally, so when you have a flow status, which in our case is going to be the flow status associated to the HTTP risk of having a numeric IP host. Once you have that flow status, you can optionally trigger a flow alert. So to trigger a flow alert, you have to create another Lua file with the specifications of the alert. If you do that, the result will be to have not only the status set for active flows, because active flows are going to disappear after a while. We are going to have alerts generated, and so alerts will be available for historical analysis and additional investigation of the problem. So let's see how to create a flow status and how to create a flow alert so that eventually our plugin will be able to be more effective in detecting this kind of behavior. To create a flow alert, I need to define, basically, I need to create a definition for the alert that I want to generate. And how can I create a definition of the alerts that I want to generate? I can just create a folder. Inside my plugin folder, I create HTTP risks/alert definition. As I said, we want to trigger an alert when the numeric IP host is detected. I'm going to call this alert Lua file, I'm going to call it alert HTTP numeric IP host, because the name of the file is just a meaningful name that represents what the alert is about. Let's add some contents to this file. So this file basically needs a way to create the alert, so to prepare a JSON for the alert. And it also needs to tell ntopng some metadata of the alert, such as the name, title, and a key. So now we are going to see the contents of this file. As I said, we need a function to create our alert. Basically, this function creates our alert and prepares a JSON. So I'm going to call this function create HTTP numeric IP hosts, and I pass this function alert severity and HTTP. But this function is generic. You can add more params here. You can say param 2, param 3. You can do whatever you want here, and you can add these params to the alert JSON. So param 2 equal to param 2, and etc. So this is just a way to prepare the alert JSON of the alert we are going to create. That's basically this. Once we have created this function, we just prepare something here. We just return a Lua table which contains a title. We can say HTTP. I can give just a meaningful title for this alert. I can just say HTTP numeric IP found in host. I can just give a meaningful name. And then I set the creator for this alert to the function that I have here, function create numeric IP host. There's another thing that we have to note here. This is the alert key. The alert key is a numerical integer identifier which is used by ntopng to uniquely identify an alert. You need to create an alert, you need to pick these alert keys among those available under scripts, Lua modules, alert keys. This file has all those alert keys are alert keys for our built-in alerts. Then, as we are writing a user script, you have another pool of alert keys for user scripts. And here in this example, I just chosen alert user 02 for the alert key of this plugin. So now we have created created the definition of our alert. Finally, the last thing to do now is to also create a flow status. So similarly to what we have done for the alert definitions, we have to create a flow status definition. So something for the active flows. And now what I do is to create a directory HTTP risk status definition and to also create the actual HTTP numeric IP host status definition file. What are the contents of this file? Let's look at them. The content of this file is basically needed to tell ntopng some metadata for this flow status. Again, we need to set title and description, HTTP numeric IP host. We say description, HTTP numeric IP found in host. Plus, we have, similarly to what we have seen for alerts, we have a status for the, we have a key for the status. Again, the key is a uniquely integer identifier, flow keys. It's it's an integer identifier which uniquely identifies our flow. And so it's available inside flowkeys.lua. For this plugin, I've chosen status user 02. So this is pretty much all we need to set a flow status and generate a flow alert. So now everything is in place. The last thing that is needed is to slightly modify our HTTP risks.lua to actually generate the alert, because so we are going to replace basically this line, to change this line higher right into something which actually triggers the alert. So to trigger the alert, I have a method available called flow.triggerStatus. And as we can see from this example, I'm going to call flow.triggerStatus using the status that I have previously created. So status type, status HTTP numeric IP host. So using this, ntopng will automatically trigger the status and generate the alert. So now I can save everything, refresh the plugins one more time, and see if everything is working. So no complaints from ntopng. So we can do our request one more time. Okay, request is successful. So now if we go to the active flows page, we see that we have a numeric IP host. Now, as you can see, we see that our flow is alerted, and the alert is HTTP numeric IP found in host. So everything we have set up in the flow status and alert definition now appears here in the UI. We see the URL, which is the IP address / blah, blah, blah. So from this point on, every time ntopng will see an HTTP flow with a numeric IP in the request, will trigger a status like this one. Of course, the flow is no longer active. So the interesting thing is that an alert has been generated, because alerts are accessible also when a flow is no longer active. So if we go to the alert page, we pick the type, HTTP numeric IP found in host, and here we have the alert for the flow we have generated. So this is pretty much everything that you need to know if you want to extend ntopng to create, to analyze the risks associated to flows and to trigger and to trigger alerts. You can do this experiment one more time. Every time ntopng will detect this behavior, will set another flow status and emit another alert. Here we have another alert. 7 seconds ago, HTTP numeric found in hosts, and we have all the details of the flows: source and destination IP address, source and destination port, MAC address, and whatever is available. As a bonus, I would like to also show you how to send these alerts toward external endpoints. This is not strictly related to the writing of a plugin, but it's still something interesting that we have been working on recently. So let me show you how to send the alert to a Discord channel. So here I have set up a Discord channel here under the recipient of my ntopng, so I can test it. Now my Discord, let me open my Discord so I can show you this. I want basically to show you how to send an alert toward external endpoints. If I go to this channel, general, I have a test here. If I do this one again, test, see test, I can change the name, I can change webinar, can do test. Now I see that the message test is from webinar. I want to send this alert. I want to send the alert to this channel. What I need to know is just to add the Discord recipient to the flow post in this way, edit. So now all the flow alerts will be delivered to Discord as well. Let me generate one more. All right, and here we have our alert delivered with the TCP info 178, blah, blah, blah. So almost time for me to wrap up. I think that's pretty much all we have seen. So let me also mention that everything can be localized using I8N, meaning that if you want to write international plugins or use multiple languages, you can do that. It's completely supported. And yes, maybe in future webinars, the next webinar, we are going to see also how to write host or other types of user scripts or other types of plugins. So to wrap up, I would like to briefly recap what we have seen. We have seen that ntopng, starting from version 4, it's a highly extensible with Lua plugins. Using Lua plugins, you can write user scripts to execute your own Lua code periodically or when certain events occur. And in the actions that you can perform, you can analyze the payload of flows and packets, and you can trigger alerts and set flow statuses. So it's pretty much all. So now I would like to, maybe if you have questions, if you have something that you would like to see or discuss, I mean, I would be happy to respond to your questions, or if you have feedback, if you have suggestions, if you would like us to extend or change something, or anything, just let us know. I mean, I'm here. And here also Alfredo and Luca are with us. So, and Gabriele, we will be happy to respond if you have questions. In the meanwhile, let me leave this slide with some references for the plugins if you want to start doing your own experiments. Okay. Yes. Thank you. If you have questions, please go ahead.
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
When you're setting these up for alerts, do you have to have alerts enabled in the GUI?
Yes. 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 So do you currently have alerts disabled because maybe you were receiving too many alerts?
Yes, that's how
Okay.
it currently is for us.
All right, I see. So in the latest work that we are doing that I've partially shown before, we have introduced the concept of recipient so that you can basically decide who is going to receive what alerts. So even if you have a ton of alerts, you can just create a recipient only to receive that particular alert with that given severity or with that given category. So, I mean, using the latest development, you will basically be able to not being flooded with alerts. If you want to see an example, I can show you a quick example. So let's see here. For example, I have a Discord recipient that I want to. So the Discord recipient basically needs a webhook URL. Then I can create a recipient for this Discord. Let me create a recipient. I can create Discord. Let me create a recipient for the administrators, admins. I select the endpoint, Discord, and I say admin, severity info, and I can choose the categories of the alerts that I want to receive. I can create this. Let's say that I want to use this recipient only to receive events of the use of ntopng. So basically, if someone logs into ntopng, if someone logs in, if someone logs out, if someone changes the configuration of ntopng, I want to use this recipient only for this purpose. So I can simply set this recipient to this system pool. And now, let's say if I do a change, if I create a pool, if I do, I don't know, another pool, if I change something in the configuration of ntopng, and as soon as someone changes this, I can go to my Discord channel and see this. User admin created a new pool, another pool with members. If I delete this stuff, I would expect a notification to be received here. And indeed, we have user admin deleted pool. So even if ntopng was generating 1 million of alerts, using these mechanisms of recipients input, you can select with a very finely grained way, you can select who is receiving what. So even if there were 1 million of alerts, this admin recipient would have only received the 2 alerts, created another pool, and admin deleted pool. So this is what we have done to somehow filter and simplify and make more flexible the way alerts are generated and sent toward their recipient.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Do you guys have any more question? I mean,
I have a question.
hi, Ron. How are you?
Good. In terms of when you write these plugins, what is your best practice to maintain, let's say you get a new version of ntopng, how does the end user archive or maintain the plugins so they're not erased, and what's your best practice for that?
Okay. I mean, currently you maintain plugins basically we don't change the API. So
No, I didn't mean necessarily the API, but let's say in those directories where you specify where you have to put the plugin.
Mm-hmm.
So if it gets overwritten by maybe a new version of ntopng, is there a way to export and import your plugins so you can maintain them? That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I see. So currently there's no way to export or import them, but package manager do not overwrite or delete plugin files that you would place inside those directories. So if you place a plugin under user share and ntopng plugins, the package manager is not going to overwrite or change that file. So it's pretty safe from this point of view.
Okay.
Of course, we can add an additional directory if that would be necessary. We can add an additional directory, custom or /custom or /user, or add another path in the file system. Anyway, in the documentation, there's also a way to package plugins. So it is explained how to create a dev package for the plugin so that you can distribute and deploy a plugin even across multiple machines using a dev package, which is basically the most common way to distribute software packages.
Thank you.
No problem. Any more questions, guys? Maybe I understand that I think there are several new concepts that it's not easy to introduce and talk about all of them in just 1 hour. So if you really want to, if you really have questions and you want me to go back and have a closer look at some things that I've shown, just please let me know, and I'd be happy to respond. Okay, I think there are no more questions now. So we can